Welcome to Crying in the Book Club, the hit new podcast where three emotional friends talk about comic books that make them emotional. I am Emily, I am your host, and I am here as always with John Luke. Hi, John Luke.
Hello, Emily. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm here also with Alex. Hi, Alex.
Hey, Emily. What's up?
How's it going, guys?
It's pretty good.
Oh, my day has been just simply epic.
That's true. Did you want to save that for your cry space
Yes.
for your tears of joy?
Yeah, we can do that. I was
Definitely.
gonna change it to a laugh space because I have been doing a Joker laugh all day, basically, as I look at posts on the internet. But
I love that for you.
Yeah.
me too.
We are here for our second spooky episode for the month of October. We are talking about Tomie by Junji Ito, famed horror mangaka Junji Ito. I guess I
Junji
can.
Ito D's nuts. Am I right?
Sure. Hold on, wait. I guess I do.
Did that fall flat?
Yeah, there we go. No,
Was
there you go.
not very funny. Thank you.
No, it was.
I gave you an air horn.
Look, it was.
You didn't even
I
get
appreciate it.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah, I could have done that. I gave you an air
True.
horn.
Yeah.
That's true.
But yeah, so this was the debut work of renowned horror mangaka Junji Ito. He began writing it when he was 24 years old. It was published by Asahi Sonorama and appeared as a serial in the horror shoujo manga magazine Monthly Halloween from 1987 to the year 2000. I didn't know that a horror shoujo manga magazine was a thing that existed, so I love that. Excited to find out more about that later in the future. I also like that it was called Monthly Halloween. But
I was just gonna say, damn, they get monthly Halloween in Japan. We only get it once a year, and they have one every month.
Yeah, they get
where the fuck did we go wrong?
12 times a year, baby. Tomie was first published in the United States by Comics One in the year 2001, but with flipped artwork so that it read left to right the way that English is traditionally read. This was something that they tried a little bit when they were bringing manga over to the US in the early 2000s. It did not really catch on. Tokyo Pop really revolutionized the game when they brought manga over and then just didn't flip it, and they got to attribute that to being like more authentic when really it just saved them like a lot of time and effort to not have to do that, which I mean it's better anyway because the art is meant to look one direction. It does not always look as good when you flip it. So but I didn't know that they tried to bring Tomie over that early, that it was during the time that they were trying to flip manga, so that amused me when I found this out. The story was initially inspired by the way a lizard can regenerate its tail if it is cut off. Ito also wanted to explore a story where a character dies, then mysteriously returns to school as if nothing has happened. As he developed the story, he established that the titular character would be a mean-spirited girl because he believed it would be more interesting if the manga featured someone that wasn't likable. And I agree. We'll get into that. To date, Tomie has been adapted into 8 live-action films, 1 3-episode J-drama, 1 novel, and several episodes of Junji Ito anthology anime. There are 2 different Junji Ito anthology anime, and I believe there are 3 Tomie episodes in one of them and 1 Tomie episode in the other. I have not watched either of these. I hadn't watched any of the adaptations of Tomie until today. I did watch the first live action movie. It is not very good. It is pretty boring, which was unfortunate. But I had some time today, and it was only like 104 minutes or something. So, there was also a planned live action web series adaptation of Tomie for the short-lived streaming service Quibi, but this was presumably abandoned after the demise of Quibi in 2020.
Yo, where my Quibi heads at?
I kind of wish that this had made it to production before Quibi died, because the concept is so funny to me. I would have loved to see how that would have played out.
I mean, Quibi horror shows were so good, such as the state based horror one where there were going to be 50 shorts, one for each state, and I think they made 2, and they were awesome. So I would have loved to see this adapted for Quibi. I think that could have only gone one way, and that one way would have been awesome.
Oh yeah, it would have totally rocked.
I'm the Quibi head, yeah.
So I guess there's not really a lot of background info on Tomie, other than like obviously what I've already gone through. Like I tried, I read some interviews, I read other people's posts where they talked about other interviews. Like I tried to do some digging, and like the most I could come up with was that like the aside from like the lizard thing and the character dying and like the idea of a character dying and coming back was semi inspired by like a student in his class, a male student in Ito's class when he was young died, and like he kept having like the strange uncanny feeling that one day his classmate would just show back up like nothing had happened, and so he decided to take that crumb and use that as part of this. But as far as Ito has said, Tomie herself is not inspired by any person, any real person. So, but that's something that people have speculated on. But he's pretty tight-lipped about it, I guess. But the plot summary. Tomie is an anthological manga series of it's a series of connected vignettes centered on the titular main character, a mysterious, beautiful woman named Tomie Kawakami, identified by her sleek black hair and a beauty mark below her left eye. She acts kind of like a succubus, possessing an undisclosed power to make any man fall in love with her through her mere presence or through psychological and emotional manipulation. She drives these people into jealous rages that often lead to brutal acts of violence. Men kill each other over her, and women are driven to insanity as well, though there are some who are strong enough to resist her. I feel like there's really only the one story where there was a guy that Tomie had like no effect on.
I think there are 2, but yeah, they're few and far between.
She is inevitably killed time and time again, only to regenerate and spread her curse to other victims. Her origins are never explained, but it is suggested by some older men in the series that she has existed long before the events of the manga. Each story showcases various characters that encounter Tomie in her many forms, with some having their own arcs and or returning later in later chapters. Aside from recovering quickly from gruesome and seemingly mortal wounds, Tomie can also replicate herself by sprouting from any part of her body, whether it be from severed limbs, organs, or even her spilled blood. Radiation accelerates her healing and regeneration process. Her cells are also capable of transforming a victim into a Tomie via organ transplant. Multiple characters are even driven to dismember her corpse, unwittingly allowing more Tomie copies to grow and spread throughout the world. It is also shown that even if Tomie's body is not injured, her body will attempt to sprout another Tomie through tumorous growths, usually when she is under severe emotional distress. Some Tomie copies, however, cannot stand one another. Each thinks itself is the real Tomie, and the others are all fakers. Which made me think of Shadow the Hedgehog, so I put that in the soundboard. Fire is the only known method to destroy a Tomie for good. So, that's Tomie. I could have gone into like explaining all of the different vignettes, but honestly, there's like a lot of them and a lot of characters, and a lot of characters that you only see like once. So I figure we'll probably just talk about the different shenanigans that Miss Tomie Kawakami gets up to as we discuss what we have read. And so I guess let's get into that. Let's do that. Were either of you familiar with Junji Ito before I made you read this?
Yeah. He did a little old manga, one or two before as well. Well, not after, I guess after, but yeah. I've definitely read more Junji Ito this year than I have in my entire life, which is neat.
Cool. Is this the only thing that you've read, or?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just the way that you phrased that, I wasn't sure if you had read something else. So
no, I mean I just heard of him before as like
okay,
like
okay, gotcha, yeah.
As this like horror master. I read something, but
yeah, I mean he's got kind of an iconic aesthetic. Even if you haven't read anything, most people have like seen the art. John, what about
you? I've seen Junji Ito art before. I own his Magic the Gathering cards. They did a secret lair of 4 alternate arts from him, and I thought they looked sick, so I bought them, even though I'd never read any Junji Ito before this. But I have sort of admired his work from afar, I guess, in the sense of like I've seen it and thought, hey, that's cool. There were definitely like some panels when I got to them in Tomie that I'm like, oh shit, I've seen that before. Like there's the scene where there's all the copies of her underwater sort of crawling out of each other, and I'm like, oh, I did the soy face point at it, like I recognize that. So there were definitely a couple moments like that in this book, but I hadn't actually read any Junji Ito before, and I haven't like watched any of the manga or live action movies or anything. So
yeah, my you guys are familiar with like what like ahegao clothing is?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, well, the reason I bring it up is because Gwen has a pair of sweatpants that at first glance it looks like it's like ahegao pattern, but it's actually like a bunch of Junji Ito illustrations, but tiled like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Sounds very funny.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But anyway, yeah. I am glad that both of you had heard of Junji Ito before. I kind of expected that because he's sort of a pretty universal name, even outside of anime and manga circles. I had forgotten about the magic cards though. I bet those are pretty cool.
They are very cool.
How does Tomie compare to other manga that you have read or other horror comics in general?
I read it left to right, so it was immediately better. was the thing, because the website I read it on was like it actually screwed me up for the first like 10 minutes, because I was like trying to read right to left, and I was like, this book flows really weird, and then I realized this book did, and it was like, oh, that's cool. I read it reminded me of this anthology I read when I was getting into comics that I thought was like super edgy and super good. And now that I read, the first volume and such of this, it's like, oh, they just literally stole Junji Ito's work and like changed it slightly. It was like one of these horror anthologies that has like 8 volumes or whatever of it, and they're like, always at cons and stuff. And I'm like, wow, they just ripped this.
That's really funny,
because like it was so familiar, some of these stories that were like, oh wow, huh, with like slightly different spins.
Extremely funny.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you remember what the horror anthology was called?
Call them out.
I can I'll do some googling. But John, Luke, what's your?
Uh, I'm just curious. I'm wondering if I have read any of it. It's I it's very different from obviously the other manga that I've read, which is
Yeah.
very limited. Although I will say visually, I definitely think there's some comparisons to Alita in terms of some of the body horror that's in here. Like some of the villains from Alita also have that same sort of like
Oh, toads.
fucked up look to them that Tomie and other characters in this book often have. There's a degree of gruesomeness to Alita as well that I think is present here, but obviously it's kind of in service of something very different at the end of the day. In terms of how it compares to Western horror comics, at least in terms of stuff I've read in more recent years, it seems like there's a lot more focus on body horror, but I know that like I think that that is like just partially because of what I've read
Mm-hmm.
of Western horror comics. So a lot of like Western horror I've read has been more like I guess like
It's more like
it's more
psychological horror.
either psychological horror or like more like this is monster horror I guess, but more
Mm-hmm.
traditional monster horror. So you
Yeah.
know obviously like werewolf vampire type stuff and you know creature from the Black Lagoon,
Yeah.
Dracula, things like that, or things that are like directly inspired by that.
Yeah.
That's less body horror y. A lot of it, like even though it's like published by, even though like I've read a bunch of stuff published by like Vertigo and Image, it feels like a lot of it shies away from, you know, there's no one. I've never read a Western comic where a character has been so thoroughly mutilated that somebody mistakes them for dog food. So
Sure.
again,
Fair enough.
if anybody has any Rex, I'm down to read it. Like that sound like I'm not. I enjoy body horror a good deal, so I'm
Absolutely.
here for
First,
stuff
like
like that. But it definitely
first thing
seems
of
like
that was for me was reading Jeff Lemire's Animal Man that had some like shots or scenes where like people's
sure,
spines would just be like popping out. I mean, this obviously takes it deeper, but that was sort of the one where it was like kind of brought me back to those roots.
yeah. That's not a bad point of comparison. Like that book definitely does have some body horror in it,
As much
as
as
you know,
PC
as much as you can
comics,
get away with.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah,
Junji, like body horror is kind of Junji Ito's like whole
sure, yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Is like that's just kind of what you're here for.
It's the David Cronenberg of manga in a
Uh
way.
yeah, yeah, you could say that. um but yeah, I was going to say something about
Well, how is it
something.
compared to other manga you've read?
Yeah, actually I don't know if I don't remember if I mentioned it to you guys. I don't think I've said it yet, but I hadn't read Tomie before this. This was my excuse to read Tomie because it's something that I've been wanting to read for a while and had just not gotten around to it yet. So I figure, why not give myself the obligation. I had read other Ito stuff before. I've read some like just random short stories that I would like hear about online. In particular, the um what is this something Amigara fault or whatever, the one where it's like, this is my hole, it was made for me. I don't know if you guys have seen the memes, but anyway, that one's pretty famous online, so I've definitely read that, and I read a couple others that I can't remember off the top of my head, and I've read some of, he's got this little series called like Junji Ito's Cat Diary, where it's just comics like about like his cats, but it's like drawn in like his style. So it's super fun. I highly recommend looking into Junji Ito's Cat Diary. And also he did some like Pokemon illustrations that I am a big fan of. Yeah, so I'm yeah. As far as like other manga that I've read, this is definitely Ito in general tends to be more anthological. Like things tend to be, he does a lot of short stories or like this kind of I haven't read all of Uzumaki, but I understand it's slightly more over connected but than this, but he does a lot of short stories, and that's not, I haven't read a lot of manga short stories, so that's something that's slightly different. I haven't read a lot of horror comics, to be honest, so I don't really have that much of a that much of a comparison there. We've talked about the art, but like, what did you guys think of the art? Even though, like, I mean, it kind of goes without saying that Junji Ito art fucking rocks and owns bones almost all the time. This is also like his first work, and you can really tell in like the first, like the art in the first few chapters is not, it hasn't quite hit like that, like iconic style as much, and it's a little, I mean, I don't want to say like not as good, but it definitely doesn't, like, the stuff that happens in the first few chapters. Like, there's not as much visually that like totally dazzles the way that some of the pages of later chapters will. But what did you guys think of the art, as this being your first like real exposure to Junji Ito art in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks great. Like, everything I've seen from Junji Ito has been phenomenal, so this was like no exception to that. I think it would have been really funny if one of us, after that intro, one of us had just been like, "Nah, this shit fucking sucks."
Yeah, it would have been really
But
funny.
I mean, honestly, I think sure, like it's stylized to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but most of it feels very like it's really the body horror stuff and those specific sequences that stand out. The rest is like obviously very proficient and it looks
Yeah.
good, but it's not anything special. But then, oh, I shouldn't say it's not anything special. It's like way better than probably what 95% of people can produce. But
It's
it,
extremely competent, but
It's
like
pretty generic it's not, until it's like, holy shit, the body
right.
horror comes out,
it's
and it's like,
what it is it kind of lulls you into a false sense of normalcy because of how normal everything looks.
Right. That's what I was going to say, is that like it really is an effective sort of tact for the book to take, is that it does look fairly standard, and then it hits you, not obviously like once you get through enough of these you're sort of expecting it, but it still
Mm-hmm.
is like shocking when you see whatever the case may be, whether it's like
Yeah.
the hairs growing out of somebody's body or the mutilated corpses or the fully formed head and the sort of shriveled, not quite fully formed like rest of the body.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple like just visual cues that I really like. I like that a lot of the men's eyes, like when they fall for her, they get this really dark outline, like they're really tired or wearing eyeliner. They kind of
Mm-hmm.
look like Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith, which or like Robert Pattinson's Batman, which is fun. I enjoy that. There's a lot of those details where like a lot of the faces have like just enough detail to be like, okay, you can tell the characters apart from one another.
Mm-hmm.
And like Tomie herself obviously has the very like the mole below her eye that is like very distinctive, but then like there are moments where there's a close up and all of a sudden it's like this fully detailed face that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And it never really happens with with the Tomie character specifically, but often with like her victims or
Oh.
people in their orbits, where all of a sudden he'll hit you not with something that's not like body horror,
Mm-hmm.
but some like really detailed facial expression or something to really hammer home a point about like how that character is feeling. And usually they're feeling like anguish or
Mm-hmm.
despair, or I guess in some cases like really out of control lust, I suppose. But it really comes across in all of those moments in a way that I think is really effective. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, it's the classic horror almost like jump scare thing, where it's like, oh, you just hit them with, you lull them into false sense of security, then you hit them with this out of nowhere. But it is, I mean, there's a reason that tool has been employed for decades and even longer. It's because it's a very effective one. The sort of contrast between the benign and the horrifying.
Alex, what did you think about the art?
Yeah, I hated the art. It was like
Nice.
like
Hell yeah.
I mean, just as I said, it's kind of like it's like better than like most manga art. I feel like on like the regular normal level. Like where I
Yeah.
feel like it.
I mean, it helps that as the name implies, this was a monthly magazine, so
Yeah.
coming out once a month, you're gonna get like a much higher quality than a series
For
that's
sure.
coming out once a week.
Yeah, which I mean, it might be less of a like, wow, he's such a great artist, and more of like, hey, you have time to do it. But as soon as you get
I mean,
into
it's
the
it's a
more,
little column A, a little column B.
yeah.
Like,
But even if you did think that, like, as soon as you hit the horror stuff, and as soon as you get like, it's things start to feel a little weird. And I like that it doesn't. A lot of the time, it doesn't like jump right into like body horror and like stuff popping out. It's just like the regular characters being unnerved by like stuff's happening. Like, well, in the first one where Tomei's like alive, and everyone's like, huh. And some people are like, "There's no way," because they don't finish the sentence. But you're like, "What do you know? Like, what's going on that she can't be alive?" Or
yeah, I
like
love the reveal at the end of that where you find out that like all of her classmates killed her. I think that it just that makes for such like a good singular horror story. Just like that, the concept of that chapter.
Yeah, it's a really incredible reveal at the end. I think like knowing that that's like the first thing that somebody wrote, and I mean, I don't know, maybe Junji Ito wrote stuff in an amateur capacity beforehand.
Yeah, I don't really know much, but
that is just such an incredibly well told story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, sure, you get that like maybe the art is not as like detailed or well rendered as it is later on, but just the building of suspense towards that reveal is so perfectly paced out.
Absolutely.
It was a really exciting first issue, I thought. Like it's just a fantastic like way to kick off the series.
Yeah.
And it really gets it, I think, like it really sets up the series too, as because when you said that it was like about a witch or something or a succubus or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean before we read it, I said it was a ghost story.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So I expected something like that going in. So when it was like, oh, dead girl shows back up to school, I was like, oh, okay. I was sort of in my mind, I was like geared up for one thing, and then when it gets to the reveal, and it's like not at all what I was expecting.
Yeah.
It was a really fucking effective moment. And that moment kind of gets replayed later on in the series in ways that are to like varying degrees of efficacy, I think. Often, sometimes even better than the reveal in the first issue, but just that sense of not knowing at all where this or like just that sense of like it being completely blindsided by it was really cool.
Yeah,
in the first chapter.
I feel like it really I feel like it's a really good like tone setter because it shows you immediately off the bat like where these stories are willing to go in terms of like gruesomeness, essentially.
It doesn't really hold anything back in the first one where you're like, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah, it's like shit's gonna be dark. Did you guys have a favorite moment or chapter? Because we read, I haven't mentioned it, but what we read or what we were supposed to have read, I don't, I had my own personal copy, so I didn't actually fully check all of what you guys were linked. But it's supposed to have been 3 volumes, 750 pages. So that's a lot of a lot of to have read. So did you have a favorite moment or chapter?
I mean, the first one just does such a good job of like establishing everything that it's probably my overall favorite, even if some later on might do the same thing better. It's just kind of cool that it's the first one and it sets its own. Favorite moment? It's when it's like there's the old couple and they're like they keep on adopting kids, and the kids just keep dying, and then like you find out that the maid's just poisoning all the kids. And there's a great scene where the old people with no teeth are just like attacking the girl's arms, but they have no teeth. And it's just like so weird old people, like I don't know,
like weird old people hickeys.
Yeah, that's exactly that's my favorite moment. The weird old people hickeys mixed with the poisoning.
I really like the photo stories. I think it's a two-parter. Where the setup is basically that when it's when you get the reveal that when a photo is taken of Tomie that you can see like a head sprouting out of her.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like that story because I felt like it was the first time that it's fairly early on. I think it's like chapters 7 and 8 or something like that. Um, and I really liked that it felt like kind of the first time that there was a real supporting cast, and obviously like you don't see those characters again. But it was it was really cool having the supporting cast members and them sort of having a back and forth with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it's all impacted by the stuff that Tomie does, but
Yeah.
I thought that was really fun. But yeah, it's actually I double checked. It's actually 4 and 5 are
Mm-hmm.
are the issues where that happens. There's
Yeah.
that good sequence where uh the boys from school kill Tomie, as
Mm-hmm.
all of them inevitably end up doing, and it's left the like decapitated corpse is left in the room with the photographer girl,
Mm-hmm.
like stands up and the head has not fully sprouted out of the neck, but you have like
Mm-hmm.
the stump neck with the facial features on it, and that is like a really chilling image. The sort of like decapitated corpses that get up and walk around is always like a horror trope that I find like very disturbing. So that I mean, not that I think probably most people would find that disturbing, and not that I'm like
Sure.
unique in that or anything, but
No.
it's a particular thing for me that it does really affect me for whatever reason.
The one
Uh,
from that for the one from that story that gets me is because of the way that her blood soaked into the carpet and stuff, like she combined with like the plastic matting underneath the carpet and like is growing another head, and they like try to cut it, but then like afterwards it's just plastic in the end. But like just
uh-huh.
the visceral like the image of like her like head connected to this like plastic that is also skin
Yeah.
was
A little
very
unnerving.
very gross.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one I really like is the one that I referenced a little bit earlier about the village where the men commit suicide. And
Mm-hmm.
it's because they're being tempted by the Tomies beneath the water. And there's
Mm-hmm.
the two fishermen who go out one night, and one of them sees Tomie's body float to the surface, goes in to rescue her. He doesn't come up. His friend goes in afterwards and sees like just that mass of Tomie's
Mm-hmm.
sort of just consuming his friend, which is a really kind of just gruesome in all the best ways.
That was probably the most unnerving image for me in the book. And it's just like,
Yeah.
it's just like, not quite like an eldritch horror like thing, but just something where it's just like, it's so big and so like, what is
Uh-huh.
even going on kind of thing.
There's also another moment like the rug moment there where like one of the Tomies is growing out of like a rock outcropping. The first
Yes.
one they see. I do really, that's another element. It is kind of a recurring motif. It comes up a few times that like Tomie is growing out of other things, like either in nature or man-made things that are like, that stuff is also like disturbing,
She's like a
obviously.
weed growing out of
Yeah.
cement sidewalk.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um what do you guys think of Tomie as a character?
She's fun. She's always meeting new people, getting into hijinks, but she always comes back. She always comes back. She's very like sitcom character. Nothing really changes with her.
Once again, this is a story about a bitch that's just too bad for everyone around her. as we mentioned last week when John and I talked about Park Chan Wook's thirst.
Nobody can handle Tomie. Yeah.
Yeah, John, what did you think?
I don't know that I think about Tomie's character very much as like an actual character, more as like
She's not.
She's more like allegorical, if anything, than a character. But I do agree with Alex. I think she's fun. I like that. I like that she just finds new ways to torment people. Like she doesn't really do the same trick twice. She's got range, like you meet her at the beginning and she's like, it's like, a Japanese cultural product about a schoolgirl who turns evil. Where have I seen this before? But then, she can also be an evil, she can also be like an evil young mother and an evil an evil, like, little wisp that escapes from she's got a lot in her. It's not just, she's not just, she's very multifaceted.
She can be an evil baby.
Yeah, she can be an evil baby. I love the idea that that at the end there's a bunch of babies that get injected with Tomie's blood and they just become Tomie's that are just like horrible little monsters as children, which is, I feel like, is just indistinguishable from normal children. So.
When I was saying evil baby, what I actually meant was the Tomie that's just like a heart or whatever that they are pretending is a baby that likes to watch buildings burn down.
Right. Yes.
No, yeah, see, she's got the range.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta hand it to her in some cases.
Truly, I am kind of obsessed. She's so funny. And I mean, like, this is the type of character that I was bound to love, which is why I wanted to read this in the first place, because I knew that she was gonna be like a huge, horrible bitch. There's kind of a stereotype online of like the type of girl that has Tomie as her Twitter icon. Which I feel like you can, I feel like I don't even have to explain. I feel like you can just imagine the type of person that would be. Yeah, it's like you guys said, she's fun, she's creative. But you're also right that she's not really a character. She is an allegory. She is a representation of things, and I'm sure we will get into like what she means or what she could mean, because Ito also has not really gone on the record too much about what Tomie is quote unquote about or whatever, although
I think it's pretty clear. But
I mean, yeah, I just mean, like, he hasn't specifically said, so there's nothing that we can like point to and say like word of God necessarily.
Sure. Yeah.
Just for clarification's sake. But he did, I read in an interview, he mentioned that it would weird him out at first when he would have like young women come up to him at conventions and be like, I want to be like Tomie. But like at a certain point, like, he kind of gets it, because it is also in a way Tomie is kind of like a feminine power fantasy. But I just, that the idea of him being very confused by Tomie fangirls was kind of adorable to me. I don't know if you guys know much about like Junji Ito as a person, but he has a reputation for being like this just like very mild-mannered, very normal dude. So like in great contrast to the horror, the horrific things that he draws.
I think I saw a thing. It was like a Junji Ito quote, him talking about how wonderful life is and like humanity is great, and then it was a Miyazaki quote being like, humans suck, the world is a shithole, and then it like shows the stuff they made, and it's like, okay, interesting.
Yeah, they get put in contrast a lot.
In some ways, a lot of Miyazaki stuff is more cynical than Tomie, but
Yeah, I mean,
don't
it's
know
it's,
if you've
it's just from
read
like
it,
a pure like
but yeah, I
aesthetic
just
thing.
from
It's like
yeah, from an aesthetic standpoint,
yeah,
yeah, it's
Yeah.
obvious. It's not a shot
But
at Miyazaki. I obviously love Miyazaki,
oh,
but
absolutely,
he's doing another
absolutely.
film.
love to see it.
Yep.
Yeah. Did any other characters in particular stand out to you guys? It's okay if the answer is no. I know a
The
lot of them
answer
are kind
is
of interchangeable.
the answer is yes, but we've kind of already talked about them. It's the photography characters and the ones that the old couple that Alex mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
who are
Oh,
really fun.
Yeah.
I do like I think it's the arc right after the photography club one where they're hiking in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason that one stuck with me, and then the one with the four brothers, and one of them is like deformed.
Mm-hmm.
But that one mostly stood out to me not because I think that character in particular is like really interesting, but more because it was just so different from the rest of the shorts, where
Yeah.
he's the one he it's kind of this weird paradox where he is like obviously deformed and unattractive, but he does not have any interest in Tomie, which makes her pursue him even harder than
Mm-hmm.
before.
yeah,
I just like that story in general too, where then he ends up with four Tomies, and it's kind of a mirror of his relationship with his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
But the character himself, I think like a lot of the characters, it's more they're more allegorical than they are
Yeah.
actually meant to be actual people, I
yeah.
guess. So I wouldn't say that anyone really stood out to me too much.
Yeah. I mean, like, gun to my head, you probably couldn't get me to name almost any other character in this whole series. Like
Yeah,
I could maybe squeak out like a single first or last name, but I couldn't. Like, I think I remember the girl in the photography chapters is named like Tsukiko,
something like
and
that.
and
Yeah,
that's probably all I could do.
yeah.
But yeah, like, and that's fine. In my opinion, like, I don't think that they necessarily have to be characters. I think that's all right.
Yeah.
Uh, the Tomie vignettes all tend to follow a basic formula. Tomie enters the orbit of her unsuspecting victims, proceeds to ruin their lives, and then they are driven to kill her, after which she regenerates. Did you find this repetitive when you were reading?
I mean, repetitive in that like I
Like, did
noticed
it?
the pattern, but it
Did
didn't really take away from it because I feel like they were
yeah.
all like different enough, and the art was so good, and it was honestly fun. Also being like, okay, like this is the beginning of the story, like I know how it's gonna end. Let's see how we get there, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I asked because in part of my preparation for this, I was reading some like Goodreads reviews, and there were a few people who mentioned that they felt like like that it was a little too formulaic, a little too repetitive. So I was just wondering if you guys
Yeah, those
felt
are
that
people
way.
who don't fully appreciate the different ways you can, like all the different range of things you can do to a human body
No, that's
to mutilate and destroy it.
no, you're
Which,
right. I read a lot of bad reviews of Tomie. Let me be very clear. But in seeing that, I was just interested in what you guys thought of that critique, because even though I enjoyed it quite a bit, I could recognize where like it was just sort of like, okay, like these stories are going to follow kind of the same pattern, but I didn't mind that they were going to follow the same pattern because like each time that they did was fun and different.
in many ways, it feels like a very lazy critique to me too, because it's refusing to engage with the text on anything further than a surface level. Where like surface level, yes, like okay, Tomie shows up psychologically and physically destroys some people and then leave, and then that's the end of the story, right? But in
She
terms
comes,
of
she
what
eats,
this
she leaves.
yeah, in terms of what the stories are actually about, like I think it's pretty like there is a range there, right? Like
Yeah.
I think Tomie generally is pretty much a stand-in for the same kinds of ideas, which I think we'll get to. But
Yeah.
like the I don't know. There's a lot of different themes going on in those stories,
Yeah.
that I think are interesting. So it's not really, it was not really a big deal to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, like I also was only being like kind of facetious when I said it's cool to see the different ways you can mutilate a body. I like, it's fun,
Yeah,
like
no, I mean, like,
that
that's
context,
like,
like it's great.
that's Ito's basically that's like his whole like that's like his whole thing is like, man, wouldn't it be fucked up if this happened? And
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would.
And it would be fucked up. It would be fucked up if you like dumped enough body parts into a vat of sake that the sake animated into a woman that killed you. Yes, that would be fucked up. But is it also extremely sick? Yes, it rocks. It's so awesome when like the vats of sake just come alive and you get the wisps of different tomies coming. It
So
rocks.
good.
I loved it. Yeah. No, it's great.
I have a feeling that you're gonna feel similarly about this next question, but I wanted to just use this also as a way to talk about themes in the book. Some have alleged that the gratuitous nature of the violence committed against Tomie throughout the story borders on misogynistic. Do you agree or disagree? I saw multiple reviews of this book on Goodreads that complained that like they were like, clearly Junji Ito is like taking out his problems with women on like in this book, and or like uh that this is like the book is reveling too much in the various ways that she is that she is has violence committed against her, or that just the very fact that this is a book where we are seeing a young woman get killed over and over and over and over again is just inherently misogynistic in nature. But I find the question of like whether or not this is a misogynistic work to be interesting. So I'm putting my two cishet male coworkers on or co-hosts on the spot to talk about misogyny.
So I can go first, I guess, because I don't understand how you can come to this conclusion if you have a developed brain, because the book is, am I either I'm just extremely stupid, or the book is literally about the like the male rage that gets directed at women over like social constructs around being rejected, right? Like that is like what Tomie is a stand-in for. Is she is the sort of like, which is why I was also surprised when you said that Junji Ito was surprised that like women found Tomie to be like aspirational, or they were, or maybe not aspirational, but they were fans of Tomie, because like in a way it's like, isn't that what they would want? Like it's the idea that you can act like there's a retributional aspect to it that like you may think whatever you think about that morally, like it is a very understandable mode to process the world in.
Well, I
Where
mean, she's also like a huge bitch.
sure, but like men often do violence to like commit like really heinous acts of violence
No,
against
I
women
meant
who are huge bitches. And
no,
like,
what I meant was the reason that I would imagine one of the reasons that
oh,
Ito
I see.
would be surprised at women saying I want to be like Tomie is that in
Sure.
many cases she is a huge bitch for basically no reason.
Right. No, that part is fair, but I think
Yeah.
that's not the part about the character that most. I would assume that that's not the part about the character most people.
No,
Find
sure,
relatable.
absolutely. I just yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
I can see
that does
why.
make sense.
Yeah.
Because she does definitely. I mean, there are lines about how she basically all she wants is to be desired. Although it's often other characters who say that about her, that like that's she just wants to be desired, and then gives men an urge to kill her. Which also this is a classic trope in fiction, that like the idea that like
Mhm.
the only way that like men who think that the only way they can make somebody like a woman truly theirs is by killing them, and then they can retain like this perfect image of them in their heads, which also I think is why there's a great irony to Tomie being like this idealized queen of beauty, and then
Mhm.
but like she never ends up that way, right? Like as soon as somebody tries to do that, it do to her like try to preserve her in that state or whatever by killing her, like she immediately becomes just like this horrific creature. And there's a fun little irony to all of that. But yeah, no, I think that it's like I think that say like a book like Tomei is misogynistic is like equivalent to like having a very very low IQ. And not that IQ is like a real thing or anything, but like it just seems very asinine. Like it just seems very much like, oh, author made story about this, author clearly endorses this, oh, I'm 7 years old.
Alex, what do you think?
I was saying yep and and you guys didn't even get to hear that. That's so disappointing.
Such a
But no,
shame.
it's exactly. It's like people, if you like, they read maybe a Wikipedia article or something where they were like, okay, Jinjito, he's a guy, okay, and then it's like, okay, she dies a bunch of times. Oh, and it's not good. Like these guys are doing bad things to her. Like, why are they doing bad things to her? Why are you writing it like this? And it's like, just for shits and giggles. That's it. That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the misogyny thing is definitely, I guess, missing the point of it. But
Yeah.
um, I don't know. At the same time, no, there's no. I don't see it at the same time.
No.
Yeah.
I also think it's like I don't know. I don't want to say it's too clever or subtle or anything, but there is also a lot in here that's sort of like criticizing, beauty standards and like and gender roles and stuff like that, in the way
Oh,
that like
absolutely.
all
hmm
of the other female characters want nothing more than to be like her. Even though being like her is to sort of live this like horrible life of pain and suffering, where like the only moments of reification you have are like when you brutally exact the violence that has been exacted upon you onto somebody else. It's kind of like a just a brutal cycle. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a literalization of I think like the sort of internalized violence that a lot of people go through, in terms of like their own body images and stuff. So
Yeah.
I think I mean, but that's like what body horror should be, right? Like that's it's actually using it in a way that's like I mean, for all we say here and sit here and say like, oh, it looks really cool, and obviously, sure, it looks really cool. Like it actually is interested in like what it means to like have your body so like destroyed and alter and like irrevocably altered in ways that are sometimes in your control and sometimes out of your control, right? Like that I think
And yet to
is really
persevere
interesting.
anyway.
Yeah. Well, and in some cases to not persevere, right? Like that in some of the cases of especially some of the other women in the story who
Well, I meant
they
Tomie, like
yeah,
her.
no, I know,
Yeah.
but I think it is also interesting the contrast with some of the other women who don't persevere through it, right? That it
Mhm.
can have like and even some of the men who are so in like so like lustful, I guess, about her that like it just does destroy them, and I
Mhm.
enjoyed all those elements of the book. Like I think that there's a lot of like compelling stuff there.
Yeah, I one of the other like complaints in this vein, I guess, kind of involved the way that all the other women character or girl characters in women and girl characters in this book are a lot like like meeker and more like traditionally like one of the complaints that I saw, I guess, was like that the idea that Ito is like like positioning these other women in contrast to Tomie, like these are the good women and Tomie is a bad woman. And I think that that's extremely reductive. I think that what we're seeing a lot of times is that like these quote unquote good women are more just like the type of woman that society like, and especially like Japanese society wants women to be like. I not that North American society is not also super sexist, but it's just a different kind of sexist. And I mean, and I think you make a good point, Jean-Luc, that like these women often don't persevere. It is in fact Tomie who like blatantly disregards feminine social norms, who continues to persevere.
And I can understand why somebody might look at that aspect of the story and think that that might actually be somewhat misogynistic. That like
Yeah,
the one who was able to make it through in the end is like the very traditionally pretty woman who can, in some in some ways get whatever she wants through
mm-hmm.
like her charms and her good looks. Like that is a more interesting critique than woman die at the hand
Well,
of
and
man,
well,
therefore misogyny.
and I've also
Um,
seen stuff to the effect of like the narrative blames Tomie
yeah,
for the violence that's brought upon her, that that it is a result of her actions and her horrible attitude, according to the narrative, that is why violence is visited upon her. And I think that also is kind of missing the point. uh
well, hmm. There is like a degree. There is a degree of like the classic like slasher logic of like, sex is evil, and if you have sex, you will be killed. To some parts of this book, but I think
sure.
it sort of oscillates back and forth between doing that and kind of doing the opposite of that, which I think is actually interesting because I think there is like there is in some ways a bit of a gray area there, and some of it is just like the framings of how some of the stories are framed, but like there is like I think there is a nuance to like, yeah, she sometimes does do things where like, yeah, she is kind of a horrible person to some of the men that she engages with, and like there are people who are horrible to other people, and like that doesn't mean you should kill them. Like I don't
Yeah,
think the book like steps over the mark of being like, oh, she deserved what she got.
no,
I
absolutely.
think in some cases, like there are other characters who are portrayed as having gotten what they deserved. But I think most of the time, no. Like in Tomie's case specifically, like most of the time, like she is portrayed as like like first as a victim in many cases, and then as sort of like a vengeful spirit, and then later on as as the anthology progresses, like mostly just like a vengeful, or not even a vengeful spirit, but just like a wrath-filled spirit who is doing goofs and bits and hijinks on other people.
Well,
So
she kind of in a lot of ways she kind of represents all of like men's collective fears about
yeah,
women and about
right.
like the way that women will treat them. And so like when I see Tomie like doing things that would quote unquote like that would make her deserving or whatever of the treatment that she gets, like it highlights that being a dick should not be a death sentence. And like men justify the use of violence against women when women are not being violent towards them because of like this type of like disrespect and stuff that Tomie is supposedly doing against the men that she's interested in or whatever, or who are interested in her. But yeah, like at the end of the day, like nothing that she does is deserving of being hacked into pieces, and yet this is the only way that people seem to be able to treat her.
Yeah, I do think I think that's pretty much right. I also think that there is a sort of simplicity to the way Junji Ito portrays the character, as like, you know, the men always want to just like completely like kill her and destroy her,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is in some ways betrays a deep cynicism about how he feels about men in general,
Yes.
in a way that is like I don't think necessarily accurate, obviously, in a way that is like in some ways like essentialist. And I think you can critique the story more from that angle of like the way that it portrays men as like men always want to do this like these horrific acts of violence to
Mm-hmm.
somebody. I don't even think it's a critique necessarily. I think it is just interesting that like that, or at least when he wrote this, it seems like that is clearly how he felt about a lot of about the situation, right? That like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, men who are shunned will always want to commit these horrible acts of violence. I don't know what like inspired that necessarily, because I don't know much about Junji Ito, but I think it is
Mm-hmm.
interesting for a male writer to have that perspective. I think it's a perspective that like a lot of female writers end up having, I think, through mixture of personal experiences and like you know, media consumption and stuff. But like it is interesting that like a man would have that perspective on it as well. So I don't know.
Well,
It's really it's cool. It's good stuff.
as I kind of alluded to, like gender roles in Japanese society are like, honestly, sometimes from like what I have seen, it seems even like harder coded into everything than it is in like North America.
I think that there is something very telling about the fact that a lot of contemporary young North American right wingers are huge anime and manga fans, because I definitely think that there is something about the pervasive traditionalism in
Absolutely.
a lot of not I shouldn't say a lot of Japanese media, but a lot of Japanese media specifically that becomes popular in the West has a lot of those themes, and I think it absolutely there's absolutely a connection, if not a direct like connection, between the right in Japan and the right in North America or the West writ large. But you can definitely see the sort of cross pollination ideologically,
Absolutely.
which is why I have such a negative response. Partially why I have such a negative response to a lot of like popular anime stuff that gets popular in the West, because it is very like corrosive. So I do think that is an interesting aspect of it as well. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. Like, on the whole, like, Japanese societal standards are like still very conservative, and that is often reflected in a lot of like media that gets really popular. You know, Japanese society is largely racially homogenous, and so, you know, the fucking Nazis love that shit because it I mean, I'm not gonna go down there, but yeah. So
and they also love it when you know, you can marry 16-year-olds.
Well, I mean, actually, I think that
like, I don't think that, not in Japan, but in a lot of manga, there's a lot of portrayal of like older men and younger women.
Oh, no,
so
absolutely.
In terms of stuff that gets popular over in the West, like I think that jives absolutely with like.
Well, I mean, even
ideology, but
we see this in Tomie, that like the
100%.
You know, a lot of the relationships that she has are with men who are like clear, you know, she has a lot of relationships with like, you know, boys her age, whatever that even means, because she's like this weird immortal being. But like when she is in the form of a teen girl, she has lots of relationships with like other teen boys, but she also has relationships with like adult men. And like
Yeah.
in the very first chapter, like the reason that she dies is because she tells the teacher guy that she might be pregnant with his baby, and then she like
Yeah.
turns and falls.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, that is absolutely unfortunately prevalent in you don't, I guess, well, I was gonna say you don't see it as much anymore. It just really, I guess, depends on what you're watching, but it's not as mainstream
It,
as
no,
it
no,
used to
totally.
be.
It is still a part of the weeaboo culture specifically, though. Like the whole like waifu shit is
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
the like constant. I mean, you can't like look at an Evangelion tweet without going to the replies and seeing some 30-year-old guy talking about how much they want to fuck Asuka or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
That is it's not like that it's necessarily as prevalent in the media itself, but it is a prevalent part of the fandom in the West.
No, definitely.
Unfortunately. So
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right there. But anyway, I guess I don't know that I have much else to say about the misogyny question. So,
yeah.
how
Do you have anything else, Alex, about misogyny?
It's not good.
You heard it here first,
Thank you for
folks.
your bravery on this.
I like to be edgy.
At least someone on the podcast can condemn it.
Yeah, John and I are misogynists,
Silent.
so we can't. But
well, we did not explicitly say we weren't, So Alex was the first one to explicitly come out against misogyny.
And now, if you say you're against it, it kind of feels like you're just doing my thing. So
I'm just bandwagoning.
Yeah.
I am against misogyny, but
in your own way.
Yeah. Well, I would say in all the normal ways too, but
how does Tomie stand up against other women as monsters in horror? I mentioned Jennifer from Jennifer's Body, Ginger from Ginger Snaps, because those are
I
two
haven't seen
big.
much horror in my life.
Well, I
So
know
not a
John Luke
thing.
has.
Are they? So I guess question is like, do most women as monsters in horror have more character to them, or is it a similar thing to
these two specifically that Emily referenced? Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of the times it's a lot more unwilling, at least to begin with. Jennifer from Jennifer's Body is a bit of an exception, I guess, but also
No,
no, it is like she does not become a succubus intentionally, but as soon as she becomes one, she's like loves it.
Oh yeah,
is my point. Like as soon as she becomes the monster, it's like she kind of revels in it. But I feel like
so
a lot
does
of the
Ginger.
time, like, not at first. She's initially very, like by the end, yes, like she.
Oh yeah,
like,
I mean like
loves killing people, but
she's kind of freaking out at first, but I don't know, like I feel like she accepts it.
Yeah, she does accept it. That
pretty
is true.
easily.
But I think even then, like with the like, Tomie is a little different, both in that sense, but also in the sense that like there's not necessarily a glee to it, like the violence at least. There's a glee to the part where like she clearly likes toying with people. I think that part maybe she enjoys, but the violence is a little more sinister, I guess. It's not like you don't get the sense that she like lives for the parts where she gets to murder people and destroy their bodies. It's
Yeah.
At least that was my sense of it. So, but I think it like in terms of how the trope is executed, I think we just talked at length about it. But that is kind of how the trope plays out in other women as monsters sort of horror as well. That it's often about like women who have really bad things done to them by men, and then sort of reenact that onto other men.
Yeah.
And in some cases, the men who initially like attacked them or assaulted them or whatever.
Yeah, because generally it is a result of some sort of assault or rape that that women become monsters.
Yeah.
which kind of sucks, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the most literal way, it's like classic like sexploitation movies, right? They don't have monsters in them, but like you can definitely see how these types of stories come out of like the 70s 80s era sexploitation stuff, where it's like, well, let's get rid of let's just get rid of like the explicit rape and just make it like gets turned into a monster, like a vampire or succubus or something.
Yeah.
And sort of layer in this layer of allegory, at least, so it feels less exploitative.
Yeah, definitely.
In a way, but yeah.
There's also woman as monster is, as I'm sure you can imagine, like a subgenre of horror that I'm fond of, which was another reason that I wanted to read this, is because I knew that was basically all I knew about this. I didn't know much about the premise of this book, other than there was Tomie, and everybody wants her, and some fucked up shit happens.
Some fucked up shit, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
How were how many of the adaptations have you seen? Because I know you briefly touched on that earlier.
Okay, I only watched the first live action movie. Did not really care for it, kind of boring. But there is two girls kiss in the movie, so like that's pretty cool.
Not bad.
I enjoyed that, but other than that, just a kind of a boring movie. Didn't love it. Also, it was a surprisingly difficult movie to track down for how much Tomie as a character is sort of beloved. I couldn't find a download of just Tomie that was a good download. I had to the only one that worked was like a folder that had like 5 out of the 8 Tomie movies. It's actually technically, okay, I said there's 8 movies and 1 J drama. What I also should mention is that the J drama was it originally aired on TV, but then the 3 episodes were recut into a single movie that was one of the movies that was in the download that I found. But so I only watched the first Tomie movie, and it was kind of boring. I have one of the Junji Ito anime anthology series that I've been meaning to watch and just have not gotten around to it because I heard it was not great. For some reason, Junji Ito seems to be difficult to adapt, even more so than other like manga and anime type stuff. But I mean, manga and anime live action adaptations, there's literally only one that is good now, and that's One Piece on Netflix somehow. Not that I haven't watched it, but that seems to be the reaction from basically everyone who has, is that they finally made a good one. But up until this point, pretty much all of them have been roundly considered bad, and I've seen a bunch of live action anime adaptations, and I can agree based on the ones that I have seen.
Yeah, not everything can be Avatar: The Last Airbender, or just
so true.
The Last Airbender, I guess.
So true.
I thought Death Note was pretty good.
Oh, fuck off.
That's the only Death Note I've ever seen or read.
Me too.
Or experienced. I mean, Willem Dafoe doing his voice, cool. He's got a cool voice. I liked
it. I think it's fun.
I think, John Luke, I think you should watch the Japanese live action Death Note movies.
Is it good? Are they good?
No, they're not really very good.
Well,
I've seen the Death Note musical. That's what I've seen.
Yeah, the Death Note musical rules.
Yeah, that's
unironically, actually, the Death Note musical is really good. Like that's not a joke. That's not a bit. Like, it's actually really good.
I'll probably not be watching that. But
I mean, that's fine.
Jean-Luc only watches things by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Do you think that you will be reading any more Junji Ito in the future?
I'd like to. Yeah.
I'm down. I'm down. Yeah.
I haven't read all of Uzumaki, but it is considered like his like magnum opus. I almost picked it for this episode, but I decided to go with Tomie because I wanted to read it. And also because Uzumaki makes me a little crazy when I read it because the body horror is insane.
I definitely like to read something of his that's more one story start to finish and see what that's like with him.
Well, Uzumaki is also like it's like vignettes centered on different characters, but it's like got like it's got more of an overarching thing than Tomie necessarily does. But and there's also Gyo, which was one that I I really wanted to pick for this episode, but I didn't want Gyo to be you guys' first Junji Ito work because it is about a spooky shark with mechanical legs that can run on ground.
That sounds fantastic.
And it's
why could this not be our first Junji Ito work?
Because it's good. Because it's I didn't want to go straight for the goofy.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough.
But I if we ever feel like doing another Ito work in the future and we don't do Uzumaki, it would be fun to do Gyo because it is about a shark with mechanical legs that runs on the ground. And yeah, also Junji Ito somewhat famously did a manga adaptation of Frankenstein, which I hear
fun.
is really good. So you should definitely check that out if you are interested in reading any more Ito works. I hear his Frankenstein is very good. So yeah. I'm glad you guys liked this. I was a little worried. With like the vignette pacing that maybe this wouldn't necessarily hit as much for you guys. But I'm glad that everyone seems to have had a good time with our number one girl boss, Tomie Kawakami.
Keep girl bossing.
Yeah,
I need a girl boss who will do some of the things. I'm not. No, I'm. Sentence.
And my last question, which was suggested by a friend of mine that's a big fan of Junji Ito, when I was talking about this episode, how would you defeat Tomie if you had to?
With fire, because that's the only way to defeat Tomie.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you have to like incapacitate her first.
Yeah, I've been a Volcel for so long that she would have no impact on me. My Volcel ways what is it? 8 years of semen retention. No woman is ever getting. I'm never going to be attracted to a woman again. So it would be over for her. It would be like she'd be banging on my door, please love me, please give me attention, and I would be meditating, enjoying a night of gaming with the boys, and not thinking about it. So,
wow, that's beautiful.
That's honestly exactly how I expected you to answer, Alex.
I would probably like ask that shark with the legs that runs on land and just do what you can do. But if that doesn't work, Jean-Luc seems to have a good plan. Maybe I can watch his masterclass.
Yeah, you can watch my series of YouTube videos about how I'm slowly developing powers and how I've gained so far 7 IQ points according to the internet test that I do.
That's crazy. Are you a big fan of the Roman Empire? Is that another?
I actually never. I don't think about the Roman Empire ever because they're losers and frauds.
It's true.
Like, imagine your empire collapsing. Like, that could not be me.
But now we have pasta. I don't know.
I think we had it before the Roman Empire.
I didn't have it before the Roman Empire.
Well, you weren't alive before the Roman Empire, so I guess technically that's true. But I'm just saying,
Emily, how would you defeat?
I would simply not.
You don't have to.
I would 100% fall victim. to Tomie. No contest.
Yep.
So I'm the only one coming out of this alive, I
Hey,
guess.
my
Yeah.
sharks. We don't know what sharks do. Like no one tried to use a shark on land.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Somehow I think the shark on land strategy would just result in Tomies that can now live underwater. Oh no, we actually had those already, so it'd be even more Jover.
It's good.
You have to imagine that at some point, I sort of expected the book to go here at some point. That like, wouldn't you just get to a point where like you have just killed the whole population of the world and all that's left is Tomies, just wandering the globe like with no one to desire them
I
anymore?
would love
Because
to
like
see a story where like an
they
astronaut comes
made,
back, like
yeah.
after getting lost in space and like lands and he sees one Tomie and is like it starts off on like, hey, I just got back and you meet this girl, you don't know anyone else, and then the whole
Hmm.
planet's Tomies and he's like,
See,
oh no.
yeah, because like in each story in this book, they're creating like a minimum of like 4 Tomies per issue, and some even more. Like when that issue where the
Under the
Suicide Village
sea.
issue, there's like a solid like legion of
Yeah,
Tomies
there's like a whole
walking on the
parade
village. It's
that
yeah,
walks down the
I
street.
just and the body count is really high too. So you got to imagine eventually you're just going to be a world of Tomies, which for some maybe that's good. But I just like the idea of like all of the Tomies doing like little pranks on each other and like trying to kill each other. Like they have to adapt. They can't have like men in their thrall to kill the other Tomies. They have to do it themselves. So I
Yeah,
think that'd be
that's
fun.
the thing is they the Tomies would turn on each other because
Right.
it and I
And in the process, create more and more Tomies.
yeah. And I think I think I kind of cracked it that it seems because I was wondering like because not all of the Tomies try to kill each other, but I think
No.
like the ones I think if they all come from like the same like event or the same original Tomie entity that they can work together,
See,
but it's when they're all
oh,
like when they are all these like discrete Tomie entities that are not together, I think is when they see each other as enemies. But I don't know. I mean, like we don't really and that's the best thing about Tomie is that there are no like rules. You can just like something like basically anything can happen.
yeah. I do appreciate that it never like really gets explained. I think that's fun.
Yeah. Do you guys hear that sound? It's the sound of the Doomsday Clock, signaling the time for our first ever Cry Space. This is a new segment that we're introducing to the show. We're trying it out. Where since we're crying in the book club, we talk about something that made us cry over the past 2 weeks between or yeah 2 weeks between episodes. So John Luke, I know that you are prepped and ready to go.
I'm changing the cry space to a laugh space because the things that have transpired the day that we're recording this are simply too funny. My laughing space is that Kevin McCarthy has been removed from the speakership of the U.S. Congress. As somebody whose brain is severely broken by politics to the point where I made it my job, it is very funny to me to watch the Republican Party eat itself and collapse it on itself.
They never thought the leopards
It,
would eat their face.
yeah, it's great. I think that President Biden, should give Matt Gaetz the Presidential Medal of Freedom tomorrow for his work in destroying his own party. Thank you, sir. We thank you for your service. I know you've said some horrible things over the years, but it was all in service of a greater goal. We will finally obliterate the scourge of the Republican Party from American politics, thanks to you. Historians will remember you for centuries. So thank you, Matt Gaetz. The only good thing you'll ever do. I hope you beat Ron DeSantis for governor in Florida. That'd be really funny. That also would be a laugh space in 2 years. Um, I hope that the funniest possible outcome is that he defeats Kevin McCarthy he brings Kevin McCarthy's speakership down, and Democrats immediately reopen the investigation into just what is going on with the fact that you were Venmoing large sums of money to 16-year-old girls. What was that about, Matt Gaetz? We should look into that some more, I think. So we can give you the Presidential Medal of Freedom in the morning and put you in jail for pedophilia in the evening. This would be a great day.
Ideal day for Jean-Luc Bobo.
Yeah.
What about you, Alex? Do you have something to cry or laugh about?
That was pretty funny. That was pretty funny. Someone who's, knows Matt Gaetz, not personally, thankfully. But yeah, it's very funny. My cry space is that I started a new job this week. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
A brand new job. Yes, I'm crying because it's so chill. It's 2 days in, okay? Like, to be fair. But it's just like the, learning about like, oh, this is what you're going to be doing. This is the amount of hours you're working. This is the amount of projects you're on. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. And it's like, oh, and this is, the stuff that I don't have to do already that I know. And the stuff was the stuff that I was like really not liking the other job. So it's pretty cool. Make me happy. Also, happy space because the Overwatch League's back on. We were dead for a day. And then the Overwatch League Twitter account tweeted that there'll be more Overwatch esports, which, I mean, we, obviously that was going to happen. But it's nice to see it come out in an official way. And some owners from some of the teams were like, stay tuned. So, yeah, that make me happy.
Happy for you.
Thank you.
My cry space is, and there's like a 50-50 chance that he's going to hear me say this, but so my wife and I's roommate was visiting his fiance in Sweden where she lives. He's in the process of trying to immigrate there. And apparently while he was there, his fiance became his wife and they got married and he's been home for several days and did not mention this. So that's my cry space. Is that
wow.
the person that my wife and I have been living with for years now did not tell us that he got married until we saw.
Congratulations to him, and also what the fuck?
Saw his partner post about it on Twitter. She made a cute little post about it, and Gwen and I were like, "Hey, Zane, do you have something that you want to tell us?" So yeah, very happy for him. His new wife is delightful. She came and visited us for a week earlier this year, and I quite enjoyed having her. So very happy for him. So yeah,
Hey.
I guess that does us for this episode. So if you would like to check out this show on the internet, you can find us on Twitter at Crying Book Club. Please rate and review us 5 stars on your podcasting platform of choice if they allow you to rate and review shows. Jean-Luc, you can be found at Mount Dew Liker on Twitter and Letterboxd at JL Botville. Alex can be found at Alex Hansiak on Twitter. I can be found at Pandanata on Twitter, Pandabore on both Letterboxd and Twitch, and the podcast Imagine Me and You to Know the Fresh Podcast Market, and that looks terrible. And hopefully by the time this comes out, the episode of Opinions Are Cheap that John and I were on, where we talked about the new Olivia Rodrigo album, will be out. So we'll just have to see if that actually happened. So I guess that's it. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye. I don't know if I want to say goodbye to everybody, Keep some people around.
Right now, everyone that you want to say goodbye to.
Jean-Luc and Emily.